I still remember the morning like it was etched into my bones, though ironically, one of those bones would soon crack under the weight of our shared history. The dawn light streamed through the half-drawn curtains of our childhood home, painting streaks of gold across my bedroom floor. I lay there, heart pounding, as if I sensed the storm gathering in Emily's eyes before she even opened the door. "Wake up, Liv," she said, voice low as she pushed the door open. Her silhouette cut a sharp line against the warmth of the sun, her ponytail swinging like a pendulum counting down to some inevitable reckoning. Even then I should have known. When Emily's gaze hardened, nothing good followed. I rubbed my temples and forced a smile. "What's up, Em?" She stepped inside, the wooden floor creaking ominously. "You're late. We're leaving in an hour." I sat up, confusion blooming. "Leaving for what? Our hike? It's my birthday." Her eyes narrowed. "That stupid hike. You were supposed to pack last night. And for the record, I said we, not you. I'm taking the car." Her words stung, not because of their content, but because they carried the casual cruelty that had become her signature. Emily had always loved reminding me, in the smallest ways, how I fell short. When we were kids, she used to steal my cookies and tuck them into her pocket, hissing, "Can't be too generous." Later, she'd borrow my clothes and return them with tiny stains she'd pretend to discover later. And now, 10 years older, nothing had changed. She still took what she wanted, crushed what she didn't, and walked away before you even realized something was missing. I swung my legs off the bed and inhaled deeply, trying to steady myself. "Okay, fine, let me get ready." The bathroom mirror reflected a girl I barely recognized. Hollow eyes rimmed with exhaustion, and a smile forced so many times it had become a grimace. I reached out and flicked the bathroom light on, the fluorescent bulb buzzing like an impatient jury. By the time I met Emily at the bottom of the stairs, my stomach had knotted into tight coils. Downstairs, the scent of burnt coffee mingled with the tang of pine cleaner, Mom's attempt at masking the never-ending dampness of our old house. She appeared in the doorway of the kitchen, hair pinned up in a careless bun, eyes weary but warm. "Morning, Liv," she said, handing me a travel mug. "You look like you could use this." I took the mug, grateful for the warmth that seeped into my palms. "Thanks, Mom." Mom glanced at Emily, who was tapping her foot impatiently. "Is everything okay, sweetie?" Emily rolled her eyes. "I'm just taking Liv on a little trip, Mom. Birthday present." Mom's face softened. She gave me a look that seemed to say, "I know she can be cruel, but she's still my daughter." I returned the look, wanting to scream, "She's not," but I only managed a tight-lipped nod. We piled into Emily's car, a beat-up sedan that had once been my dad's. Its engine coughed to life, and we pulled away from the curb, the tires rattling over cracks in the pavement. The house receded in the rearview mirror, and I felt a dull ache in my chest, like the memory of laughter long gone. As we drove north toward the mountains, Emily turned on the radio. "I made a playlist," she announced. "No sappy birthday songs." I closed my eyes, letting the wind of regret and anticipation wash over me. Hiking had always been her domain. She was the athletic one, the golden girl with trophies lining her shelves. Me? I was the bookworm, the quiet dreamer, who found solace in stories. And so, every time nature called, she became an Olympic champion, and I became the reluctant chariot driver. The road wound through forests that glowed emerald in the morning light. My thoughts drifted to the accident. A camper van that skidded on ice, the scream of brakes on black ice, my ribs snapping like a dry twig. The pain had been excruciating, but worse was the betrayal. Emily's face contorted in guilt for a split second before she helped me into the ambulance, her voice trembling as she whispered apologies I couldn't hear over the sirens. Yet guilt had never stopped her. She'd patched me up, ferried me home, and then returned to her life as if nothing had happened. No long calls. No check-ins, no compassion, just the memory of my broken body and her broken promise to protect me. We stopped at a trailhead deep in the trees. The air smelled of damp earth and pine, so pure it made my lungs ache with relief. Emily opened the trunk and pulled out 2 packs. "Here!" She handed me a bright green pack that looked as though it had never seen wear. Mine, in contrast, was faded and patched at the seams, the survivor of countless hikes I'd taken over the years. "Try not to rip this one." I bit back a retort. I had worn that pack through rainstorms and rocky climbs. Every curve bore a memory, every tear a lesson. But today I stuffed it on and tightened the straps. As we ascended, the trail grew steeper. Rocks jutted out like broken teeth. Roots wound underfoot like snakes. I moved slowly, testing each step, every muscle protesting. Emily led the way, her strides confident and sure. Behind me, I felt like a ghost of my former self, chasing a silhouette I could never catch. Around midday, we reached a clearing overlooking a valley tamed by mist. The view was breathtaking, endless hills rolling into distant peaks crowned by clouds that glowed silver in the sunlight. Emily dropped her pack and stretched, turning her face to the sky. "Happy birthday, Liv," she said softly. Her voice was gentle, and for a moment I allowed hope to bloom. Maybe this trip wasn't punishment. Maybe she'd planned something special, a surprise picnic, an apology, a moment of real connection. But then she stood, brushing dirt from her palms. "Come on, there's something I want to show you further up." I followed, curiosity mingling with dread. The trail narrowed, and shadows deepened under ancient pines. I sensed her before I saw her, the flash of a camera lens, the silent calculation in her posture. "What is this?" I whispered. Emily turned. The gravity in her eyes was different now. No cruelty, but something else, colder. "Let's just say I thought we could capture a memory," she said. My heart thumped, and I remembered every secret she'd kept, every kindness she'd withheld. The breeze picked up, rustling the leaves like soft applause for her performance. And at that moment, as I looked into the lens of her hidden camera, I knew this trip was never about healing. It was about control. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. I didn't move. The camera lens stared back at me like an unblinking eye, cold and inhuman, hidden between the leaves with a precision that made my skin crawl. It wasn't just a photograph. It wasn't some casual birthday memory. Emily didn't do anything casually. If a camera was pointed at me, it meant I was part of some twisted plan, and I just stepped into it. Emily turned back to the path, her voice cheerful, too cheerful. "You coming or what?" I hesitated, glancing at the patch of bark where I'd spotted the lens. My fingers twitched at my side, itching to pull it down, to break it, to demand answers. But I had none. Not yet. And the forest was too quiet, too still. I needed to play along. "Yeah," I said softly, forcing my feet to follow. The trail narrowed further, winding along the edge of a steep ridge that dropped sharply into a bed of jagged rocks and dense underbrush. One wrong step here, and you wouldn't just trip, you'd fall. The kind of fall that made bones meaningless. Emily walked ahead, humming some pop song I didn't recognize, her boots crushing dry pine needles with every step. The sun filtered through the tall canopy above us, dappling her shoulders in golden flecks. To an outsider, we might have looked like two sisters reconnecting on a peaceful hike, but inside, every part of me screamed. She slowed as we reached a rock outcropping, just wide enough for the two of us to stand side by side. Beyond it, the mountain opened up to a sweeping panorama, majestic, lonely, dangerous. She turned to me, a sudden glint of something sharp in her eyes. "Beautiful, isn't it?" I nodded slowly, keeping my voice steady. "Yeah, it is." She pulled a water bottle from her pack and offered it to me. I hesitated. "I didn't poison it, Liv. Jesus." I took it, sipped, watched her over the rim. "Why the camera?" She blinked, not even pretending to misunderstand. "For proof." "Of what?" "That I tried," she said, all breezy calm. "That I took you out. That I was the good sister." I stared at her. Her words struck like sleet. Icy, cutting, insincere. "You brought me all the way out here, to record yourself pretending to be nice?" She shrugged. "Well, you've always been the victim, haven't you? Always the one with a sob story, the broken rib, the lonely artist, the quiet little shadow." I clenched my jaw. "That rib didn't break itself, Emily!" Her face twitched, just a flicker, just long enough to know she remembered. That she knew. I'd fallen down the stairs during an argument months ago. The official story was an accident. But I'd seen the way she reached out and shoved, how her hand made contact, how her voice had risen with something deeper than anger, resentment maybe, or loathing. She looked at me now like she always did, like I was a burden that refused to go away. "That's what the judge thinks, right?" I said, my voice lower now. "That it was an accident?" She looked past me at the horizon. "I don't care what the judge thinks. I care what Mom thinks. I care what the papers say. I care what the insurance company hears." "Insurance?" Emily didn't respond. She just smiled, a slow, calculating thing that made my stomach turn. I took a step back. "What is this really about, Em?" She turned, that smile still fixed on her lips. "You know what I always hated about you? You never fought back. Maybe because I didn't think I needed to." "Well," she said, cracking her knuckles, "maybe you should start." The shift was sudden. One moment she was standing casually, the next she was inches from me. Her hand shoved my shoulder. Not hard, not enough to make me fall, but just enough to make a point. "Don't touch me," I said, voice shaking. She stepped forward again. "Why not? You're gonna tell the judge I pushed you again? Gonna fall down a mountain this time?" "Emily, stop." "Make me." The wind howled through the trees, whistling between us like a warning. I didn't move, I couldn't. Every part of me was screaming to run, but there was nowhere to go. Behind me, the ridge fell away into nothing. In front of me, my sister's rage smoldered. Then she lunged. It wasn't a punch, it wasn't even an outright attack, but she reached for my pack, tugging violently, trying to pull me toward her, and in the struggle my foot slipped on the mossy stone. Pain exploded through my side. I heard a sound, an awful crunch, like snapping celery, then heat, then nothing. I crumpled to the ground, gasping, the world tilting. Emily froze. Her eyes wide, her mouth opened, but no words came out. I tried to breathe, but it was like trying to inhale fire. "Liv," she said. Her voice was different now. Wary. Not sorry, never sorry, but calculating again. She dropped to her knees, pulling out her phone. Okay, you'll be fine. Just breathe. Don't be dramatic." "You're not bleeding." I wanted to scream. I wanted to claw the air and tell her exactly what she'd done. But I could barely move. She started snapping photos. "What are you doing?" I croaked. "Documenting," she said quickly, in case anyone asks. My vision swam. I felt my ribs scream every time I shifted. I knew, in that moment, the break had reopened. Or maybe a new one had formed. But Emily wasn't calling 911. She wasn't applying pressure or checking my vitals. She was taking photos, rehearsing her lines. I must have blacked out, because the next thing I knew, we were back at the car. I don't remember how we got there, if she carried me or dragged me or made me walk. All I remember is the ache. In the hospital, the nurses looked skeptical. A woman in her 20s, broken rib, bruised spine, no memory of the fall. My story was fractured, like my body. Emily sat in the waiting room, all false concern and bright lies. I saw the way she scrolled on her phone, texting someone, probably already rewriting the story. Mom arrived late that night. Her eyes red, her hands trembling as she clutched my wrist. "What happened, Liv?" I couldn't answer. I wasn't sure she'd believe me. 2 weeks passed. The bruise on my rib bloomed into something dark and unholy. I moved slowly, like glassware on a crowded shelf. And Emily? She vanished. She stopped responding to texts. Mom said she needed space. Space from what? The truth? And then, one afternoon, I got a message. From someone named Helena, a woman I didn't know. Her message was simple. "I saw what happened. I work security for the Parks Department. We had a trail cam that day. You might want to see the footage." My heart stopped. Helena sent me a Dropbox link. I watched it with shaking hands. There I was, walking, stopping, stepping back. There was Emily. There was the shove. There was the moment my foot slipped. And there, clear as day, was her reaching for me again. Not to help, not to save, but to pull. I forwarded the file to my lawyer the same night. The trial began weeks later. Emily arrived with her signature air of victimhood, her hair pulled back, her outfit neutral and clean. Her story was airtight, or so she thought. She said I slipped. She said she screamed for help. She even had a witness, a friend she'd texted after the fact, who claimed to have heard her side. But then came Helena. And then came the footage. The courtroom was silent. The judge leaned forward. Emily's face drained of color. And I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just sat there, broken but whole, watching the truth unfold. And when the gavel dropped, I knew, this time, she wouldn't walk away clean. The news of the verdict spread faster than I expected. It started as a whisper through our small town, on the lips of a neighbor here, a coworker there, before it bloomed into something unavoidable, like smoke curling from a slow-burning fire. I didn't want attention. I didn't want pity. But what I got instead was something far worse. Silence from the people who mattered most. Mom didn't call me after the verdict. She didn't show up in court either. Not even once during the week of testimony, the grueling cross-examinations, or the day Emily's mask finally cracked. I stared at the door every morning before the hearings began, wondering if she'd surprise me, that maybe, finally, she'd stand beside me. She never came. Even now, weeks after the judge declared Emily guilty of aggravated battery and obstruction, downgraded from attempted manslaughter, thanks to her lawyer's insistence on mental instability, Mom remained a ghost in my life. And my house, once a place of comfort, had turned into a battleground of memories and echoes. I sat at the kitchen table, the early morning light falling across the wood grain like it used to when I'd sit here doing homework. My ribs still throbbed when I moved too fast, a constant reminder of the shove, the betrayal, the fall. The doctor said the fractures would heal. That pain would fade, but he didn't say how long it would take for my heart to stop racing every time someone touched my shoulder unexpectedly. I scrolled through my phone without purpose, just to fill the silence, when a text came in. Come Mom, ***, you didn't have to destroy her. It hit harder than I thought it would, not because I didn't expect it, but because, in some corner of my heart, I hoped I was wrong about where her loyalty lay. I stared at the message. No apology, no questions about how I was healing, no shock at the footage, just that one line, as if I'd wielded the gavel myself. I typed back. Sock me, ***. She broke my rib. She could have killed me. You saw the video. The 3 dots blinked, then stopped. Nothing came. I set the phone down and let the quiet stretch on. Later that afternoon, I had my follow-up appointment. The doctor checked my breathing, asked about sleep. I lied, told him I was fine, strong, healing. He nodded, handed me a list of breathing exercises, and said I was progressing well. But when I left the clinic and opened the door to the parking lot, there she was. Emily. Not in handcuffs, not in an orange jumpsuit, just standing there, leaning against a silver Audi, arms crossed and sunglasses perched on her nose. I froze. She smirked. Didn't expect to see me, huh? I thought you were sentenced? Yeah, but my lawyer worked something out. My stomach twisted. Community service? 18 months probation, mandatory anger management. A bunch of nonsense, really. And the footage? She tilted her head. Doesn't prove intent, just shows a struggle. You know how it works. Ambiguity wins cases. And pity. And money. I wanted to scream, to shove her the way she'd shoved me, but I didn't move. I came to tell you something, she said, stepping closer. I know you think you won. You think this ends here. But you don't know me like you think you do, Liv. No, I whispered. I know you exactly as you are. That's the problem. She smiled then, something cold and final. I'm moving back home. What? She pulled her keys from her pocket, dangling them between 2 fingers. Mom gave me a copy, said I should stay with her until I get back on my feet, which, of course, I never fell off in the first place. I stared at her, ice blooming in my chest. You're not welcome there. You don't get to decide that, she said. She already has. I drove home numb, windows down, wind slicing through my hair, each gust scraping against the wound in my chest like salt. That night, I knocked on Mom's door. It opened slowly. She stood there in a bathrobe, her gray hair pinned back, her face pale. "Why is she here?" I asked, skipping the greeting. Mom sighed. "She has nowhere else to go. She has plenty of places to go, she just doesn't want to face consequences. She's my daughter. So am I. She needs me, Liv. So did I." Mom turned away, that small, dismissive motion that always meant the conversation was over. I should have walked away. I should have said goodnight, but instead, I stepped inside. Emily was in the living room, on the couch, watching a movie, like nothing had ever happened. She looked up and grinned. "Want popcorn?" My hands curled into fists. "I'm not doing this," I said, voice shaking. "I'm not pretending this is normal." "Then leave," Emily said simply. "No one's stopping you." And in that moment, I saw everything clearly. She wanted me gone, because she knew she couldn't control me if I stayed. But I wasn't going anywhere. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my childhood bed, staring at the ceiling, remembering every slap of her words, every time she'd gotten away with cruelty. And I thought about the footage, about the law, about how little it really did. The next morning I made coffee in silence while she hummed behind me. I took my mug to the porch and pulled up a laptop. I opened a new document, began writing everything. Names, dates, descriptions, screenshots, voice memos. Her voice on an old voicemail laughing about how she'd finally taught Liv a lesson. I sent it to a journalist I knew, a woman who owed me a favor. She called me an hour later. "Are you sure?" she asked. "Yes. Because this will get ugly. It already is." The piece went live the next week. Local family at war, daughter survives assault, sister escapes jail time. It trended. Emily's job fired her. Her landlord evicted her. Mom cried on the phone, begging me to retract the statement. To quote, "Let the family handle it privately." But it was too late. The world saw her now. Not the golden child. Not the misunderstood woman. But the abuser. And me? For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. People wrote to me, strangers who'd survived toxic siblings, abusive households, courtrooms that failed them. They told me I gave them a voice, that my story echoed theirs. But still, I wasn't free. One night, I came home and found my front door ajar. Inside, nothing was taken, nothing broken. Except one thing. My laptop. Gone. And on the kitchen table, a single note. Times, asterisk, "You're not finished with me yet." Asterisk, no signature. But I knew the handwriting. Emily. The note on the kitchen table sat there like a live wire, humming beneath my fingertips. "You're not finished with me yet." Those 6 words rewrote my night, my breathing, my sense of safety. They weren't just a threat, they were a declaration, a warning, and a promise that whatever I thought I'd survived was only the beginning. I didn't scream, didn't panic. I backed away from the table, phone in hand, and called the police. I reported the break-in calmly, just as the operator instructed, my voice cold and clear, even though my hands trembled so hard I dropped the phone twice. Within 15 minutes, 2 patrol cars arrived. Officers moved through the house, checked the locks, dusted for prints. One of them asked if I had enemies. I almost laughed. "Just one," I said. They took the note, promised to run it through a database. I already knew it wouldn't matter. Emily was smart, too smart. She wouldn't leave fingerprints, not when she knew how closely I was watching her. But her handwriting, that was bold, that was intentional. She wanted me to know it was her. After the officers left, I sat on the couch with the lights on, knees tucked to my chest, the window shut and locked despite the heat. I thought about every time Emily had snuck into my room as a kid, taken something, and blamed me. Every time she stood outside my door, listening. Always watching. Always a few steps ahead. I was done playing defense. I made a list. Every contact she had, every employer, every ex-boyfriend, every professor, Every former friend I still had numbers for. I didn't want revenge. I wanted evidence. Proof that this wasn't a one-time fall from grace, but a pattern. Something people could no longer ignore. The next morning, I emailed a few of her former coworkers under a fake name, posing as a background checker. Within hours, I got replies. She was controlling. She sabotaged my project and told HR I was unstable. She once hid my client files and let me take the fall. She faked a sprained wrist to get out of a performance review. I documented every word. I called a former roommate of hers, Lucy, who had always avoided family functions. We'd never been close, but I remembered she'd moved out suddenly a few years ago. "I can't talk about Emily," Lucy said the second I said her name. "Please," I begged. "She broke into my house. She left a threat. I just need to know who I'm dealing with." There was a pause, then a soft sigh. "She once told me she wanted to break me open and see what secrets fell out." That's how she phrased it. I had nightmares for weeks. "Did she ever hurt you?" Another pause. "Not with her hands. But she got into my emails, sent messages from my account, told people I was stalking her. She's good at turning people, and when she feels cornered, she burns everything." I hung up, shaken. The next step was clear. I needed protection, not just from Emily, but from the narrative she was building. So I did the thing she never expected. I invited a podcast crew to my house. The show was called Unquiet Truths, a true crime and survivor platform. They'd done exposés on narcissists, legal loopholes, police failures. I sent them my file. The footage, the court verdict, the break-in report. They responded in 10 minutes. 2 days later, they were in my living room, microphones clipped to my shirt, a softbox glowing in the corner as I sat on my couch with a blanket across my lap. I told them everything, start to finish, every betrayal, every bruise, every look Mom gave me like I was the problem child simply for surviving. They listened. And they recorded. 3 weeks later, the episode aired. Come shade, episode title, "The Sister Who Smiled as She Shoved, **. It exploded. 10,000 shares in the first day. Within a week, it was featured on national news. I was interviewed twice more. A legal analyst dissected the trial on a live stream. A psychologist explained Emily's patterns in clinical terms. And then, Emily broke her silence. She uploaded a video to YouTube, filmed on a cheap phone with a handheld ring light. Her face was tear-streaked. Her voice was hoarse. She wore a sweatshirt that said "Be kind" in pastel letters. "I've made mistakes," she began, "but my sister is destroying my life. She's twisting everything. We had a fight, people fight. I never meant to hurt her. I was hurting too, and now I have nothing." She begged, she cried, she blamed. And the worst part? Some people believed her. I started getting messages. Times asterisk. "How could you do that to your sister?" Asterisk. Asterisk. "She looks like she's trying to heal. You look like you want to ruin her." Asterisk. Times asterisk. "Typical jealous sister behavior." Asterisk. I stopped checking my inbox after that. The noise was unbearable. But I didn't stop recording. I kept documenting. Every knock at my door. Every blocked call. Every car that circled my street twice. Then, one night, it escalated. I was asleep when the window shattered. I bolted upright, heart racing, glass raining across my hardwood floor. I called the police before I even checked it. By the time they arrived, whoever had thrown the rock was long gone. But the note attached wasn't. "Stop talking, stop lying." Or, "I'll make you stop." Asterisk. This time, it wasn't Emily's handwriting. It was printed in cut-out letters from magazines. Classic threat style. The officers asked if I had enemies. I said, "I think I have fans, hers." They started surveillance that night. A patrol car parked outside. Cameras were installed. And still, I didn't sleep. Mom called me the next day, her voice small. "Why won't you just let it go, Liv?" She broke into my home, twice. Someone tried to scare me into silence. You've made your point. She's lost everything. Isn't that enough? She hasn't lost you, I said, the words bitter in my mouth. Silence. Then you'll always be my daughter. But I'll never be your favorite. Click. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just turned off my phone. The next day, a lawyer reached out. Not mine, not Emily's. A man named Patrick Keller. He represented several of Emily's victims, people she'd wronged in smaller, more subtle ways. An ex-boyfriend who'd lost his job after she spread rumors. A colleague who'd been manipulated into signing off on fraudulent reports. A classmate from college who barely graduated because Emily borrowed her thesis idea. We're putting together a civil case, he said. Class action, emotional damages, libel, invasion of privacy. Would you be willing to join? I didn't hesitate. Yes. He paused. You should know, this will escalate things. They're already escalated. The civil case made headlines. And with it came the countersuit. Emily sued me for defamation. I laughed when I got the paperwork. But my lawyer didn't. It's a real suit, she said, and she has donors now, a fan base. She's weaponized her victim narrative. This could get messy. So I fought. Not with fists or screams. With receipts, emails, screenshots, footage, testimonies, audio. I built a fortress out of facts. And still, Emily fought back. She appeared on podcasts, talk shows. She started a Patreon. She printed t-shirts that said, Survivor of Sisterhood. I couldn't believe it. The audacity, the manipulation. But people love a comeback story. Until they realize it's a con. And one day, they did. The journalist who'd first run my piece called me again. I think we have something. He'd found footage from a bar, Emily drunk, boasting to friends that the broken rib girl was her meal ticket. She laughed, mocked the trial, called herself a genius for flipping the narrative. The video leaked. Everything changed. Sponsors dropped her. Her fan accounts shut down. Donors pulled out. And her countersuit? Withdrawn. But the civil suit continued. And this time, she couldn't stop it. Her face was everywhere, not as a victim, but as a liar. Mom stopped calling, not because she chose me, but because she couldn't face either of us. And me? I finally slept with the windows open. Until the letter came. No return address. Inside was a photo. Of me, asleep in bed, taken from outside my window, and written on the back in tiny script. Size asterisk, try and sue me now. I stared at the photo until the corners curled in my damp fingers. There I was, unmistakably me, curled on my right side, my spine gently arched under the throw blanket I always used when the heat clicked off in the early morning hours. The picture was grainy, but close enough to make out the smallest details. The pink ribbon on my nightstand lamp, the cracked corner of my windowsill, the way the curtain didn't quite shut completely. Someone had stood outside my house. Someone had watched me, waited until I was vulnerable, and taken this. Try and sue me now. 5 words, small and precise, scrawled in the same crooked slant I remembered from the birthday cards Emily used to fake for me in middle school, when she forgot it was my day. I dropped the photo onto the kitchen counter and backed away like it had burned me. My phone was already in my hand, shaking as I punched in Detective Aldridge's number, the lead on my break-in case. He answered on the second ring. Liv? They've been outside my window. I have a photo of asterisk me asleep. You're sure it's recent? I'm wearing the same blanket. The same lamp. My face. We're on the way. I had a patrol unit outside within 15 minutes. They swept the yard, the alley, the space between the bushes, where someone could have crouched for hours. They found footprints, partial treads from thick boots, but the soil was dry and the imprint too shallow. Still, they took the photo, bagged it, promised a forensic team would examine the angle, lighting, and print smudges. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor with my back to the front door, holding a mug of coffee that had long gone cold. My entire body was coiled, waiting for the sound of glass breaking again or footsteps outside my window. But none came. Morning arrived like a mercy. And with it, a voicemail from Patrick Keller, my civil attorney. I heard about the photo. Do not panic. We're bringing this into our case as intimidation. It changes the stakes. We'll need you to come in today. I got dressed in silence. No makeup, no armor, just jeans, a hoodie, and the stiff set of my shoulders. At the firm's office, I sat in a room with glass walls. Patrick joined me, trailed by a woman in a charcoal gray suit. "This is Margaret Wynne," he said. "Private security. She'll be handling your residential protection moving forward." "Private security?" Patrick nodded. "We believe Emily has gone off the rails. Her team has gone quiet. She's disappeared." I blinked. "What do you mean, disappeared?" Margaret answered. "Her last known appearance was at a service station off Route 11. That was 3 nights ago. She shut down her accounts, abandoned her phone. We think she's either hiding or planning something." I looked between them. "And you think she's watching me?" Margaret didn't flinch. "Yes. Or someone is on her behalf." That afternoon, Margaret followed me home in a dark SUV. She walked through the house, took inventory, checked locks, noted sightlines. Then she installed a sensor alarm on the window where the photo had likely been taken. "I'll have 2 agents monitoring your perimeter at night," she said. "Don't answer the door unless they've cleared it." "I can't live like this," I whispered. She met my eyes. "No one can. That's why we end it." Later that night, I curled on the couch again, but this time a camera watched over me from the hallway arch, silently recording everything. Not a trail cam, not a hidden GoPro. A declaration. "You are being watched too." The episode on *Unquiet Truths gained momentum again. New listeners poured in after the stalker photo was mentioned. Public sympathy swelled back in my direction. For a moment, I believed the scales were tipping again. Then came the package. A padded manila envelope. No return address. Left on my porch. No knock. No delivery record. Inside was a USB drive. Margaret scanned it first, air-gapped from all devices. It contained a single video. Footage of Emily, crying, screaming, in some dark motel room, recorded from a webcam. "I didn't mean to hurt her," she sobbed into the camera. "I just wanted her to see me. She was always the favorite, and I just wanted her to feel it, the pain I felt." Then, slowly, she lifted her wrist. A deep, bloody gash lined her arm. Margaret turned off the video immediately. I felt sick. "This is a manipulation," Margaret said firmly. "A setup. She hurt herself? She wants you to think you drove her to it. But look at the cut. Superficial, bleeding but shallow. It's theater. She's escalating the narrative again." Patrick had the same conclusion. "This is a preemptive move, sympathy before court. If she appears broken, she can argue diminished capacity, that she was unstable during the incident. She's trying to weaken your case." I wanted to scream, or cry, or destroy something, but instead I breathed. In. Out. I spoke at another support group that week. Victims of sibling abuse. Dozens of us, some in person, some over Zoom. I told my story again, voice steady, even as my hands trembled. Afterward, a girl named Jayla approached me. "Your sister sounds like mine," she said. "Everyone says we're just dramatic, but we're not." "No," I said softly, "we're not." She paused, then added, "Do you know what makes her tick?" "What do you mean?" Jayla smiled, not cruelly, but knowingly. "The thing she can't stand. The one thing that would unravel her." I did know. Truth. Public truth. Uncontrollable, unscripted, undeniable truth. So I started a blog. Daily updates. Entries titled things like Times Day 23, How It Feels to Be Watched. Times Day 27, I Almost Deleted Everything. Times Day 30, The Photo on My Pillow. The last one was true. On day 30, I found a photo slipped under my bedroom door. A close-up of my face. Eyes closed, lips parted in sleep. She'd been inside the house. Despite Margaret's cameras, despite alarms, she knew the code. I changed the locks that night, slept with a knife beside the bed, not for vengeance, for survival. I posted the story. The photo, blurred, went viral. Police increased patrols. Margaret doubled security. Still, Emily remained a ghost. Until she didn't. Middle of part 5. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now, back to the story. One morning, my doorbell rang. I checked the feed. A woman stood there, mid-30s, red hair, glasses, holding a folder. Margaret cleared her. She introduced herself as Claire. "I'm your sister's ex-therapist." I blinked. "She sent you?" "No, I came on my own. I saw the news. The footage. I wanted to give you something." She handed me the folder. Inside were notes, therapy logs, journal entries, screenshots. "I can't give you everything. But this is legal. She released these records in an earlier case. She used them herself. That makes them public domain." I skimmed them. Delusions, paranoia, obsession with image. Her notes about me, pages upon pages about how I stole attention, performed victimhood, weaponized fragility. It was all there. I submitted the folder as evidence in the civil trial. Emily appeared via Zoom. No video, just a black screen with her name. Her lawyer spoke for her. She didn't utter a word. But the judge reviewed the logs, the photos, the stalking report, the USB video, the therapist's records. His verdict was clear. Emily was found liable for damages. $312,000 in emotional and legal compensation. She was ordered into psychiatric care, not as a punishment, but a condition. If she disappeared again, she'd be in violation. After the ruling, I stood outside the courthouse, sunlight on my face. For once, no cameras, no microphones, just stillness. But even then, a part of me knew she wasn't done. That night, I got one last package. Inside was a single item. A key. Wrapped in black ribbon. The key lay heavy in my palm, its metal cool against my skin. I turned it over and over, searching for a name, an inscription, anything that would tell me where it belonged. But it was unmarked. No letters, no numbers, nothing but the weight of her threat. I sat at the kitchen table, the ribbon still wrapped around my fingers like barbed wire. Margaret was off duty, leaving, she said, for a family emergency. Patrick had other clients. Mom was still nowhere to be found. The only thing I had was the key. My mind raced. A safe deposit box? A locker at the gym? The storage unit where she'd kept her trophies? But why send it to me? To taunt me? To lure me somewhere? I slipped it into my pocket, grabbed my car keys, and left the house. The drive was aimless. GPS off, radio off, just me and the key rattling in my pocket. I ended up on Main Street, past the corner bakery, beyond the used bookshop whose owner always gave me a nod, and finally at a cluster of offices in a red brick building. On the ground floor was a small pawn shop, Eagle's Talons. The faded sign showed an eagle clutching a stack of coins. I parked at a meter, fed it a quarter, and walked in. The bell tinkled overhead. A thick haze of dust and desperation hung in the air. Glass cases displayed watches, rings, coins. Every item with a story of someone's loss or betrayal. Behind the counter sat a woman wearing thick glasses. Her hair was streaked with gray, tied into a messy bun. She looked up, and I felt the familiar tingle of being watched. "May I help you?" she asked. I nodded, pulling the key from my pocket and placing it on the counter. "I found this. No, I received this." She reached for it, turning it between her fingers. "It's not ours." "I know, I thought maybe you could tell me where it belongs." She shook her head. "I'm good with appraisals, not with origins." She hesitated, like deciding whether to share something she shouldn't. "But there's a safety deposit facility around the corner. They sometimes get keys sent here when people lose them." I thanked her and left, heart pounding. The next stop was Evergreen Deposits, a squat building with barred windows and a keypad at the entrance. I entered the code I'd watched Margaret's team use when they installed cameras months ago. Inside, a vault hallway stretched like a tomb. Metal doors lined each side, numbered in black paint. No windows, no warmth. Just cold concrete and fluorescent lights. I stood at the entrance, the key heavy in my hand. My pulse thundered. I started down the row, trying it on each lock. 15, 16, 17. Click. Box 17. I breathed out, pressing the key in until it turned, and the small door swung open. Inside was a single item, a photo album. Its cover was black leather, worn at the corners. The pages inside were thick, ivory, with no words, just photographs. I opened to the first page. A snapshot of me at 8 years old, holding a trophy at a school talent show. I was smiling wide, dress stained with paint, hair in loose pigtails. Next page. Emily at 10, wearing my favorite dress, her eyes bright. I flipped faster. Photos of birthdays, family vacations, Christmas mornings. Gradually, they turned sour. Emily tearing the ribbon off my gifts. Me crying. Emily perched atop a hill, pointing at me as I slipped in the snow. Emily at high school prom with a date I never met, always showing off. Then came the pages that made me gasp. Medical records, stapled between photos. My diagnosis of an autoimmune disorder at 14. My first therapy notes at 16 after panic attacks. Receipts for my hospital stays. And then, handwritten pages. Emily's diary. In her perfect cursive. I hate how they look at you, like you're special, like you deserve the attention. They notice every bruise, every tear, but they don't notice me. I'm the smart one, the strong one, but I'm invisible. Next page. I shoved her down the stairs. It was an accident. She'll never know, but I did it. And God, it felt good. My head spun, my vision blurred. Each entry peeled back another layer of her obsession, her jealousy, the sick satisfaction she found in watching me suffer. My breath caught at the final entries. Judge will see the footage, then they'll know. She's not the only one who can play victim. If she goes public, I'll leak her disorder. Everyone will think she's unfit. They'll lock her up. She'll belong to me, always. Tears stung my eyes, but they weren't for me. They were for her. I slammed the door and ran. The world tilted. My chest ached in sympathy, in grief, in fury. But more than anything, I felt a terrible weight lift. She thought she controlled me. She thought she owned every memory, every frame. But these belonged to us both. And now, I held the narrative. I ran out of Evergreen and called Margaret. When she answered, I didn't speak. Instead, I asked, "What's the next step?" Margaret's voice on the phone was steady, professional. "We secure the album as evidence. I'll have forensics review every page, photograph, and document. Then, we bring it into court as new evidence." I exhaled. And then? She hesitated, and I felt the weight of her unspoken truth. This album could end everything. But it could also unleash something else, revenge so cold it shattered whatever was left of our bond. Then, Margaret continued, we use it to finalize the civil suit. The court can't ignore a confession in her own handwriting. I clicked off and slumped into the nearest chair. The leather was cool, grounding. We'd undressed Emily's deception layer by layer. Now, we had the core. Later that day, I delivered the album to the courthouse, leaving it in Margaret's custody. The chain of evidence felt surreal. Photographs that once held happy memories now weaponized, a weapon I never wanted but was forced to wield. That evening, I joined a live stream hosted by Tonson's 4 Unquiet Truths. They wanted an exclusive, the reveal of the album's contents. The producer promised sensitive editing to protect privacy, but the message would be clear. Victim and abuser were part of the same story. I sat across from the host, the camera's red light gleaming. My phone buzzed, but I ignored it. I was here to tell this version of events, unfiltered. The host asked me to describe what I felt when I opened the box. Betrayal, I said, voice steady, sadness, anger, but above all, a desire to protect the truth, so that no one else falls into her trap. As the segment ended, the producer thanked me and hinted at a dedicated mini-series. Case closed? The host asked, eyes kind. I shook my head. Justice is never one and done. It's an ongoing practice. I left the studio exhilarated, buzzing with purpose. For the first time, I felt in control. But on the drive home, my phone died. I'd forgotten to charge it in the morning. That's when I saw her. Standing under a street lamp, 3 blocks from home, her figure half hidden beneath a gray hoodie. Emily. She stepped into the light. Her face was pale beneath the hood, her eyes hollow but focused. "Hello," she said. I parked across the street, put up the window, but kept the engine running. My hands shook. "Get out of the car," she said. "Why?" She smiled, a sad, tired thing. "I have something to give you." My pulse raced. "What?" She held out a small box, once white, now stained with dirt. "Your final gift." My heart clenched. "Emily, don't do this." She hesitated, then took a step closer. "You always thought you won, but you can't see what's inside. Open it." I felt the key still in my pocket, a talisman. Yet here was another lock, not metal, but emotional. I leaned across the seat, unlocked the door, and grabbed the box. She watched, breathing shallow. I placed the box on my lap and flipped the lid. Inside was a single photo. It was Mom, younger, vibrant, waving at a camera on a beach we'd never been. And behind her, me and Emily, arm in arm, beaming. On the back, in Emily's neat cursive, "Never forget where you came from." Tears blurred my vision. She reached through the open window, her hand trembling. "You needed to remember that once? We were sisters." The street lamp flickered. The silence between us stretched, braided with grief and longing. "I'm sorry," she whispered. My throat tightened. Forgiveness felt impossible. But the photo, a relic of happier times, rekindled a spark of something I thought lost. "I don't know if I can," I said. Her shoulders slumped. "Then just keep the photo. Maybe one day." She turned away. I watched her retreat into the night. And for the first time, I wasn't sure what came next. Space Eastine. The sky above the courthouse was overcast, low-hanging clouds drifting across the pale morning light as I stepped out onto the broad stone steps. News crews swarmed, cameras pointing, microphones thrust forward in eager hands. I paused, taking a deep breath, feeling the weight of every eye upon me. This was the moment I'd been both dreading and longing for, the moment when the narrative I'd fought so hard to shape would face the world once more. Margaret throttled back a surge of agents into the background, giving me space. Patrick offered a quick smile of reassurance. Together, we moved through the press line, cameras clicking like a swarm of locusts. Reporters shouted questions, voices blending into a cacophony. "How are you feeling, Liv? What's next? Do you think justice is served?" I reached the curb and slipped into the waiting car. Doors shut. The press line faded behind us, the noise ebbing like a receding tide. But I knew it would return, larger and louder, once they replayed today's clip. I closed my eyes and let the silence take me, if only for a moment. Later, in the quiet of the security office, I stood before a bank of monitors. Each screen displayed a different angle of my home: porch, driveway, side yard, each monitored live by Margaret's team. I watched myself on the feed, a woman who had survived, documented, and confronted her abuser. I saw the armor in my posture, the steady set of my shoulders. But behind it, I felt a tremor, as if I stood on shifting ground. My phone pinged. A text from Emily's lawyer: "Your filing is under review. You may want to consider mediation." I stared at the message, the sterile gray bubble mocking me. Mediation? After everything? It was a tactic. Delay, confuse, reopen old wounds. I responded, no, and I meant it. The hours blurred. Meetings with publishers about my upcoming memoir. Interviews with podcasters. Photographers capturing my image for magazine spreads. Everywhere I went, I carried the album's revelations like a lantern in the dark, illuminating truths, but also attracting shadows. That night, I retreated to my childhood bedroom, now mine alone. I sat on the edge of the bed, running my fingers over the comforter, trying to remember simpler times. Then my gaze fell on the blank wall where Emily and I had hung our tangled Christmas lights. Light bulbs of all colors, a riot of childhood joy that now seemed impossibly distant. I rose and retrieved a box from the closet, our old holiday decorations. Inside were strings of lights, faded ornaments, and a stack of letters we'd written to each other in grade school. I sifted through them, each envelope marked with a shaky scrawl. To my sister, my friend, wishing for snow, I don't want us to fight. Tears blurred my vision as I read the last one. Promise me we'll never forget how we used to laugh together. A sudden noise jolted me, a soft scraping at the window. My breath caught. The security feed on my phone showed a figure outside, hood up, pale face pressed to the glass. My pulse quickened. I activated the lights. The figure vanished. I grabbed my robe, tiptoeing to the door. Through the peephole, nothing but darkness and the faint glow of a street lamp. Then a slip of paper fluttered to the floor. I picked it up. A fragment of the same photograph Emily had given me in Part 7. This time it was torn, showing only my face, wide-eyed in fear. My heart pounded. A text notification lit up my phone, an anonymous number. I opened it. A single word. Remember. Remember what? My mind reeled back to that moment under the street lamp, to the photo of family joy, to the confession in that album. All the fragments of our past, both painful and precious. Someone wanted me to remember. But what, exactly? I dropped to my knees, sliding the torn photo inside the box of letters. I pressed the box to my chest, knees on the floor, tears streaming. Then I made a decision. Tomorrow I would go to the cabin, our mother's old retreat up in the woods, the place where we'd once felt safe, where the echoes of laughter still haunted the floors, where, maybe, I could find the answer. The next morning, I packed lightly, laptop, journal, flashlight, the original photograph Emily had given me. Margaret volunteered an agent to follow discreetly, a compromised measure of trust embodied in a silent presence at the edge of the trees. The drive was familiar yet foreboding, winding roads flanked by towering pines, moss-covered stones, wisps of fog that curled through the branches. I hadn't been back since Dad's memorial in that cabin, a weekend that ended in shattered glass, accusations, and the first shove that would break more than my rib. I parked in the clearing. The cabin faced a frozen pond, its windows tightly shuttered. My breath plumed in the cold air as I approached the front door. Inside, the floorboards creaked, dust motes drifting in the shafts of pale light. I stepped into the living room. The hearth, now cold and empty, the old quilt draped over the sofa, unraveling at the edges. I saw my reflection in the window, pale, determined. I pulled the photograph from my coat pocket. It showed us together, Emily and I, arms wrapped around each other, smiles radiant. The back bore her words, "Never forget where you came from." I whispered, "I remember." Then I opened my journal and wrote 3 words. Find the lock. In the cabin's far corner stood a tall bookshelf. My eyes were drawn to a row of carved wooden boxes, keepsakes Dad had collected. One box bore an intricate keyhole. I fit the photograph, like a map, into the lock's center. It was a sketch, etched lightly on the leather of an old-fashioned key. I retrieved the key from my pocket. It rattled lightly against my phone. I inserted it, turned, and heard the satisfying click. The box door swung open. Inside lay a letter, penned in Mom's flowing script. My dear girls, if you're reading this, it means the past has caught up with you both. Know that love remains, no matter how broken our family has been. Inside you will find the last token of our bond. May it guide you back to one another. All my love. Mom. As I withdrew the folded parchment, footsteps echoed behind me. I turned. There stood Emily, face pale and eyes haunted. She held the torn corner of the photo I'd placed in my box of letters. "Mom's legacy," she whispered. I opened the letter. Next to Mom's words was a small envelope. Inside, a single object, an antique locket. Inside the locket, a tiny portrait of the 3 of us, Mom in the center, Emily on one side, me on the other, smiles locked in time. I looked up at Emily. In her hand, she clutched the torn photo fragment. "We rebuild from here," she said. I nodded, heart in my throat. But before I could speak, the lights flickered. And from the shadows behind Emily, Margaret's agent emerged, gun drawn. Margaret's voice crackled through the cabin's intercom. "Stay where you are." Emily's eyes widened. I gripped the locket. And in that hush, the past and the future collided. The dawn light filtered through the pine trees as I stepped onto the cabin's front porch, the morning chill seeping through my coat. I'd barely slept. My mind still buzzed with the memory of Margaret's agent bursting in, gun drawn, and Emily's desperate plea. This place, once a sanctuary, had become the crucible of our deepest wounds and the potential forging ground for something new. I took a steadying breath and followed Emily inside. The living room was silent except for the crackle of the hearth's last embers. Dust motes danced in the shafts of pale light, and the faint scent of Mom's lavender sachets lingered in the air. Emily stood by the ornate bookshelf, the antique locket glittering in her hand. I slipped the photograph and Mom's letter into my pocket, determined to protect these fragile threads of our past. Margaret's voice crackled again through the cabin's intercom. "Liv, step away from Emily with your hands where I can see them." I froze, tension coiling in my chest. Emily's eyes flicked to mine. An unspoken question, fear and hope intermingled. I rose from the box I'd been kneeling before and turned slowly, hands raised in surrender. Steps behind me, Margaret's agent pacing into view, flashlight in one hand, gun lowered but ready. "Thank you," I said quietly. "Margaret, I understand your caution, but this is my family." The agent's light illuminated half of Emily's face, revealing her pale skin and the tremor in her lips. She held the locket to her chest as if it were both shield and sword. "Family?" the agent echoed. "After everything?" Emily's voice cracked. "I know how it looks. But, Mom, this was hers. She wanted us to have it, to find each other again." Silence followed, heavy as the cabin's wooden beams. The agent exchanged a look with the intercom speaker. Margaret's voice softened. "I trust you, Liv, but I need assurance that no one will get hurt." I stepped forward until the agent's beam caught my eyes. "I give you my word." Behind us, Emily took a tentative step toward me, then stopped. The locket's chain caught on her fingers. She slipped it over her head and let it rest against her chest. The symbol of Mom's love now clasped between us. We stood in the middle of the room, a triangle of tension and possibility. "Show me the goodbye letter," Emily whispered. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the folded page I hadn't yet read aloud. Hands slightly shaking, I opened it and read Mom's words aloud. "My dear daughters, if you're reading this, know that no matter how hurt you've been, you were always cherished. This locket is a piece of my heart. Wear it, and remember the love that binds you." Emily's shoulders shook. Tears glistened in her eyes as she looked at the locket and then back at me. "I'm sorry," she said, whispered so only I could hear, "for everything." My own tears stung. Forgiveness felt like stepping off a cliff, but I reached out, placing a hand against her cheek. "I'm sorry too," I said, "for not seeing you. For letting fear keep me away." The agent's light softened, lowered. Margaret's voice, warm but firm. "I'm deactivating the intercom. I'm closing the door. You're on your own now." The click of a lock echoed. We were alone at last, two sisters in the cabin where our shared past had both shattered and sustained us. I took Emily's hand, guiding her away from the shadows of that shelf and toward the window overlooking the frozen pond. The air was cold, the world outside still whitened by frost. We stood close, shoulders touching, and watched the light shift across the snow. "We have so much to repair," I said. She nodded, voice trembling but resolute. "Together." I nodded back. "Together." A sharp rap at the door jolted us. We exchanged worried glances. I spoke into the silence. "Who is it?" No answer. Emily pressed closer. I approached and cracked the door open a sliver. Dawnlight danced on the wood. No one was there. Only a thick envelope slipped into the gap. I picked it up and closed the door. Inside was a weathered map of the cabin grounds, dotted with red X's. Over the old oak tree, the boathouse, Mom and Dad's old picnic spot. A single phrase scrawled underneath. "Find my other bone." My breath caught. Emily swallowed hard. "What bone?" I traced the X's, mind racing. "I don't know, but tomorrow we find out." We stood shoulder to shoulder, fear and determination in our veins. The map burned warm in my hands, promise and peril intertwined. And as the first rays of sun pierced the clouds, I felt that our journey, far from over, had taken on a new purpose. The morning mist curled around the cabin like a living thing as Emily and I stepped outside, the map clutched between us. Frost crackled under our boots, and the pond lay silent, a silver mirror reflecting the pale sky. Every X marked a memory. The old oak where Mom carved our initials, the pickerel-filled boathouse where Dad taught us to fish, the stone picnic spot where we'd shared sandwiches and secrets. We began at the oak, our breath clouded in the cold as we stood before the massive trunk, its bark scarred by time and etched initials. Emily pulled the map from her coat and traced a finger over the faded red X. "This is where Dad found my bracelet after that storm," she whispered. I remembered the afternoon, wind howling, branches snapping, our mother's scream. I knelt, brushing away leaves and twigs. The earth was frozen, but my fingers found a small cavity at the base, a shallow hollow hidden in the roots. I reached in, heart hammering, and pulled out a slender metal object wrapped in galloped layers of tape. It unspooled in my hand, revealing a small, rusted rod. "What is it?" Emily asked. I turned it over. The rod had a hinge at one end, as if part of something larger. "Let's move on," I said, pocketing the rod, my mind working to connect pieces. Next was the boathouse. We climbed the dock planks, stepping over moss and algae. The boathouse door hung loose on a single hinge, squeaking as I pushed it open. Inside, boats lay dormant, their sails furled, light slanted through the cracks. I followed the map to a corner beneath a dusty bench. There, tucked under floorboards, I pried open a trapdoor with the rod's hinge, hearing a click that felt like fate. The space beneath was tight. We crouched and slid inside, plane tickets, knickknacks, and letters scattered at our feet. I lifted a weathered wood box, its corner chipped. Opening it, I found a second bone, not from flesh, but a carved ivory key, delicate yet purposeful. Mom's handwriting on a slip. The key to our heart. I realized this was more than a code. It was an inheritance of trust. At the picnic site, sun rose higher, melting frost. We sat on the stone slab, the rod and key between us. "What do these open?" I asked. Emily studied the map again. Her eyes lit on a small structure behind the cabin, a shed used for tools. We hurried back. Agency replaced dread. The shed door creaked, the key fit perfectly. Inside, a single chest sat atop a workbench, dust-draped and waiting. I slid the rod's hinge into a slot near the lock. The mechanism hummed. The door swung open to reveal Mom's keepsake box. Documents rolled in parchment, each sealed with an emblem, family crest, letters to us, medals Dad received in service, and a final envelope bearing our names. Emily and I sank onto barrels, unsealing the letters together. Mine detailed Mom's hopes, for me to find resilience, for Emily to embrace compassion. Hers was a plea for unity. "My daughters will heal best when they stand together." Tears filled our eyes as we read, the frost around us melting further in that moment. Together we rose, feeling the fractures of our past shift toward repair. We stepped out into the clearing, locket and photos in hand, keys returned where they belonged. The forest around us seemed to breathe, wind stirring leaves like applause. Emily looked at me, her voice steady. "What now?" I smiled, fingers brushing hers. "We write the rest of our story, together." But as we turned to leave, I felt a prickling sensation on my neck. I glanced back at the shed, the door ajar. A shadow moved inside. Before I could call out, a figure slipped behind the trees, and the world narrowed to a heartbeat of realization. The final bone wasn't Mom's. It was someone else's. And they were watching. The sunlight sank lower behind the trees as Emily and I returned from our discovery, our breath forming clouds in the crisp evening air. The hidden chest's secrets weighed heavy in my mind, each letter a piece of our fractured history now stitched toward healing. We crossed back over the frozen pond, the ice whispering beneath our steps, and paused at the edge where the forest began its shadowed guard. "We should head back," I said, the locket and photos safe in my coat pocket. But Emily hesitated, her gaze fixed on a patch of melting snow. I followed her eyes. Deep impressions marred the ground. Tracks too large for deer, too deliberate for stray hunters. They circled the clearing, leading toward the old fire pit where we'd once roasted marshmallows under Mum's watchful smile. "Someone was here recently," Emily murmured. My heart pounded. "Let's go," but her hand on my arm stopped me. "No," she said, voice trembling. "We need to know who." She reached inside her boot and pulled out a small compass. Dad's, tarnished from years of trust and guidance. The needle spun erratically, then snapped north, pointing along the tracks into the undergrowth. We followed, branches clawing our coats, the forest growing darker with each step. My chest tightened, every rustle sounded like footsteps, every snap of twig a threat. At the edge of the ravine, we found it, an overturned rucksack, contents strewn, a half-empty water bottle, a crumpled map, a battered camera. I knelt, picking up the camera. The lens was cracked, but the memory card remained inside. "This belonged to our watcher," I said. Emily swallowed. "Let me see." She pressed the card into my palm. We slipped back to the cabin without speaking, minds racing. Inside, the fire pit outside lit the logs, embers glowing faintly through the window. Margaret's agent remained posted, hooded figure silent in the corner. I slid the card into my laptop. Images flooded the screen. Daylight shots of us arriving, Emily wiping frost from her lashes, me dragging the chest to the fire pit. Then something stopped me cold, a photo taken from behind of someone standing in the kitchen doorway, Mom's locket around their neck. Emily gasped, "Who is that?" I zoomed in, enhancing the image. The silhouette's hair spilled over broad shoulders, too thick for Margaret's agent, too refined for a stranger. And then I saw the face. Faint, but unmistakable. It wasn't Emily's, it was someone else. A chill raced down my spine. The next image showed a close-up of a trembling hand, holding a blood-stained envelope identical to the one from Part 9, inside the cabin, just behind where Margaret's agent crouched. My throat tightened. "They've been inside again," I whispered. Emily's eyes burned with determination. "We need to bring this to Margaret." I nodded and reached for my phone, but the screen was dark, no signal. The cabin's old construction blocked service. I looked at Emily. "We have to go out there, now." I pointed to the window beyond Margaret's watchful eyes. "Back way." She grabbed the locket and her compass. Together, we slipped past the agent's desk and out the back door, heart pounding. The forest swallowed us as we retraced the tracks toward the ravine, the undergrowth thick and unyielding. At the brink, we froze. Torches had been lit around a rough circle of stones, an eerie shrine in the fading light. In the center, our letters lay strewn, Mom's final note torn and pinned with a hunting knife. Emily knelt, trembling. "Why here?" I bent to gather the papers. The wind shifted, and I saw movement. A tall figure emerging from the shadows, face obscured by a hood, silhouette framed by torchlight. My breath caught. "Stop right there!" The figure halted, then slowly lowered their hood. I braced for Emily. But it was neither Margaret's agent nor Emily. It was Mom's oldest friend, Ruth, the woman who'd taught me to paint and read bedtime stories, the one who'd comforted us after Dad's passing. She looked at Emily, then at me, tears slipping down her aged cheeks. "You found it," she whispered. "Found what?" I demanded. She pressed something into my hand, a small, carved box no bigger than my palm. "The final bone," she said. "The promise Mom made." She turned away, voice thick with grief and resolve. "I'm sorry it took so long." Before I could ask more, she vanished into the trees, leaving the box, and more questions behind. Emily and I exchanged a glance, hearts pounding. I opened the box's lid. Inside lay a single object, Mom's wedding band, the one she'd taken off the day Dad died. And inside the band, inscribed, "Our bond is unbroken." The torches flickered as the forest exhaled around us, the final pieces of Mom's legacy now in our hands. But with them came the echo of Ruth's words, the promise Mom made. And beneath that, the unspoken truth, the story was far from over. The courtroom was packed. The air hummed with anticipation, every seat filled with faces I recognized. Strangers whose lives I'd touched with my story, journalists who had followed every twist, even those who had doubted me. On the bench sat the judge, his expression unreadable as he shuffled through the final documents marking the conclusion of the civil suit. I sat at the plaintiff's table, Margaret at my side, Patrick to the right, and directly across from me sat Emily. Gone were the hoodies, the camera tricks, the tear-streaked videos. She wore a gray suit, her hair loose but neat, the same face I'd known all my life, now tempered by exhaustion and resignation. The judge cleared his throat. "We are here to address the final motion in the matter of Liv Simmons versus Emily Reynolds. As you know, the court has heard extensive testimony, reviewed volumes of evidence, and is prepared to issue its final order." My heart pounded as he continued. "In light of the evidence, and in order to facilitate both justice and rehabilitation, the court orders the following. 1. Emily Reynolds shall pay restitution in the amount of $500,000, covering emotional distress, legal fees, and punitive damages. 2. Emily Reynolds shall complete a 12-month residential treatment program specializing in anger management, narcissistic personality disorder therapy, and supervised community reintegration. 3. Emily Reynolds is prohibited from contacting the plaintiff in any form, written, electronic, or in person, for a period of 5 years, except through legal counsel for court-mandated check-ins. 4. The court acknowledges that familial reconciliation may be a long-term goal, but the plaintiff's right to safety and privacy takes precedence. This order is binding and enforceable." The judge's gavel struck the block. A hush fell over the room. I exhaled, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Justice felt precise, measured, but final. Emily remained still, her eyes briefly meeting mine. There was no triumph in her gaze, only something like sorrow. Later, outside the courthouse, the sun was blinding. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. I answered as best I could, voice calm. This case was never about money or punishment. It was about accountability and safety. I hope Emily gets the help she needs, and I can finally move forward. I turned away, wrenching my gaze from Emily's distant silhouette. Over the next few weeks, I reconnected with my work, my art, my writing, my life outside the courtroom drama. I held workshops for abuse survivors, launched a counseling fund, and finally allowed myself to believe in a future unshadowed by fear. But life has a way of reminding us that healing is not a straight line. One evening, as I packed my studio to move into a new apartment, I found an unmarked envelope slipped under the door. My first instinct was dread. I thought the threats were over. But inside was a single sheet of paper with no words, only a sketch in charcoal, 2 figures standing side by side, arms around each other, faces blank. It was us. Emily and me. I looked at the drawing, lines rough but unmistakably familiar, the way we held each other at our mother's wedding, the way we leaned together at graduations, tied in the embrace of sisterhood. At the bottom, in neat cursive, was one final line. "The next chapter is ours to write." My hands trembled, not with fear but with something unfamiliar, hope. I gazed into the charcoal figures, saw our silhouettes as possibilities rather than battles. 12 parts ago, my journey began with broken bones and broken trust. Now, it seemed, it might begin with mending, fractures healed, stories reclaimed, and a future that neither of us could script alone. 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.